Welcome back to another portfolio review video. This is a series where I take portfolios that have been submitted by you for me to critique and give advice on. I always try to give advice that will be really helpful not only to the people whose portfolios I'm reviewing in this particular video, but for anyone who's making a portfolio. There's lots of things to consider, and these portfolios that I review often bring up some good examples of things that you should think about. So, hope this video will be useful. Today I've got 3 portfolios to share with you and to critique and review, and let's start off with Zacks. Zack is a designer from Berkeley, California in the States. He's 4 years into his design career and he's looking to get into in-house and agency work. The first thing I noticed on Zacks Portfolio is how well written his intro copy is. I think this is a really good example of how you don't need a whole about page with paragraphs upon paragraphs explaining who you are and what you do. Something short and sweet like this is a really great introduction to yourself, and I think this is a really great intro to Zack. It says what he does, where he works, and I like that he talks about his writing, about presentation design, tools, etc. on Medium as well. That's a nice thing to mention straight up front. I also really like the use of emoji. That's very subtle, but, done well. I think emojis can definitely be cheesy if they're overused or used in the wrong way, but that little wave is pretty cute. I wanted to review Zack's portfolio because it was a little bit different from others that I think you've probably seen in past videos where you usually see a grid of projects to click into. Zack has gone for a one-pager approach, and so as I scroll down, we see that we start working through the navigation that he had up the top. I quite like this approach because it means you can control the order in which people see your portfolio. If you have a grid of projects, of course people are just going to click on whichever one they feel jumps out to them the most, which is good in its own, it has its own merits, but this is kind of nice too, to be able to control the order in which people see your projects, and that means you can put your super impressive ones up front and make sure people don't miss them. Zack currently works for Square, and so that's what he's put up the top, which I think is a smart choice. All these infographics are really good demonstrations of your work, and I like that you can click into them and see them in more detail. I will say, as I scroll down on this portfolio, when I reached the presentation part, I felt like it was a lot of scrolling and a lot of stuff that looked very similar. I don't know if it's necessary to have all of these slides laid out on the homepage like this, just because it is a lot and it gets in the way of getting to the next project. What I would like to recommend for Zack is something that he already has implemented on his site, it seems, is to present all these slides as a carousel like this report is as well. So this way I can click through and get an idea of the different kinds of layouts that you do, and you can also see the thumbnails at the bottom, so you know that there's some variation there, which I think is what the point is probably of displaying all these slides out on the homepage anyways, to show the variation and cohesiveness across the presentation. I really like the photography of this Call of the VLED project, but I wish that I could see the details up close, because you've said in here that you were assisting with the branding and the label design, and so I want to see the label up close, I want to see what you did, and these images aren't clickable, whereas the presentation ones before were, so that might be something to think about, just to show more details of your specific part of the project. Overall, I really like your portfolio, Zack. I think you've done a good job with the design of it. The site itself gets out the way so that the work can stand out. I also like the amount of copy you've written to accompany each project. I think that has worked out really well. It's not too long, not too short. It's kind of a perfect length, really, to talk about a project. Yeah, my only feedback for you would be to think about how you're displaying each of these types of work, because it was a lot of scrolling to get through all of these presentations, and like I said, I couldn't see the details on the branding project that you'd worked on. Up next we have Victoria. Victoria is from Belarus. She's a UI UX designer, and she's had over 3 years experience in the UI UX design industry and several years of illustration beforehand. That's interesting. She recently moved to the US, and so she's looking for design opportunities and getting to know the local market and process better. So let's take a look at her portfolio. First off, this is probably one of the most beautiful opening pages that I've ever seen in a portfolio. This full browser height image often doesn't work in most situations, because if it's a SaaS product or something you're trying to sell, a potential customer could reach this site and then get confused and leave when they can't see anything to click on or any text. But because it is a portfolio, and when people go onto a design portfolio in particular, they tend to scroll, that's just a thing that happens. So you can get away with it here. So I do like the use of it. I think you've also done a good job of this really subtle parallax scrolling as well. Just like Zack, she's got a great little introduction right at the top that tells you a bit about her. It's nice and brief, but it also shows a bit of personality too. Victoria's site does show thumbnails of projects that you click into, but it is not the usual grid of 3 across, 3 down that you see on most portfolio sites. So really commend you for that. I think this looks great. Just a quick note, I would say to watch your contrast on the image behind the text there, because that could be really hard to read on some screens. Victoria does a really good job of displaying her work in the portfolio, putting it on these mock screens. I love this one in particular that shows like the markup of all the little details of the design. That shows that you're thinking about that, and you're thinking about everything being cohesive, spacing being consistent, and the whole design system rather than just designing a page on its own, which obviously as designers we know that's what we have to do, but it's nice to demonstrate it sometimes. In a few of your projects I found myself really wanting to know more about the challenges that you faced and a bit more about the background of working on it, especially with this one. This is a very short introductory paragraph, not even a paragraph, it's just a couple of sentences really, and then we get into the project. So I would have liked to hear more about the process of working on this and how you were involved. I see this photo of this woman was used as the thumbnail, and then it's also used as this background as well. So it makes me wonder, were you a part of the creative direction of the photo shoot or something? Is that why they're being shown and featured so much? I don't know. Something else I would say for you to think about, Victoria, would be for having navigation to get easily between projects once you're already in one. Perhaps I just want to click through all your projects and look at them, whereas the only way I can do that right now is to go back to your homepage, which is beautiful, let's be honest, and scroll back down and pick a new one. I think it would make it a better experience if you made it easier for people to click through all your projects, because they are very well laid out and they're very visually pleasing to look at, and so I wanted to look at them all. One last thing for you to think about would be to mention specifically what kind of work you're looking for. Maybe by the time you sent this email, you've actually landed a great job that you're really happy with, and so this is not really relevant anymore. But some little spiel about what kind of work you're available for and how they can easily get in touch with you would be great. I know you've got this email link in the footer, but it is quite small. So yeah, just thinking about making that easily accessible. Our last portfolio to take a look at in this video is by Paolo. Paolo is a 3rd year at design college, and he says he's still interested in many different areas of design, which I know how that goes. That's pretty much, you don't want to rule anything out when you're still learning about it. So he's right now working with visual identity, UI, web, 3D modeling, illustration, lots of different things, and that he is trying to pick up freelance small jobs that appear alongside his studies. So Paolo linked me to a Behance portfolio, but I saw that he also does have a website there, so I am just going to talk about both of them because they connect. The thing about Behance is that it looks pretty empty when you only have 4 projects in it, which Paolo has. And that's not to say that you should have more projects in your portfolio. I really actually admire the fact that you only have 4 projects when you're in design school, because I think the temptation when you're a student is to put in every single thing, every single brief that you work on, because you're just excited to have something done and you're going for quantity because perhaps you feel like the quality isn't there yet. Well, at least that's how I felt when I was still in design school. So I like that you've been very selective with which projects you're showing in your portfolio, and you've chosen these 4. But on Behance, it does look a little bit empty, especially when you look at it on a bigger screen. Last 2 portfolios we looked at didn't actually have a whole lot of projects in them either, so that just goes to show that you don't need a ton of projects to make a good portfolio. But I would just recommend that you put these projects on your own site where you can have more control over how you display them and how you present them to people, rather than Behance where it can just look a little bit empty. So like I said, Paolo does have a site. And this, again, is a really nice opening page. I couldn't read most of it because I don't speak Portuguese, but hey, it sounds like there's a good amount of information there, So I got excited when I saw his projects, but it turns out that these projects actually just link back to the Behance. So I think you're halfway there, Paolo. I'd like to recommend that you take the information that you give within your projects on Behance and bring it over to your own site, because let's take a look at these here. They're actually really well laid out. Like, I like this little detail of showing the structure of this logo that you made and the different colors. Perhaps this one could do with some more of the application of the branding. That's always a good way to display it. I really liked the detail of this project in particular. I thought you did a great job of showing some behind the scenes of the logo process and the brand guidelines that you put in place for it, because that's really important to think about when you're doing visual identities. And in this one, you showed it represented on business cards and things, so that's great. I would recommend you do that for all of the branding that you do. Just show it represented on some items and show how it could be used. So yes, I think you should translate all of this great presentation layout stuff you've done for your projects in Behance and get them onto your own site. I think this would be a much better place for people to experience your work. That's not to say you shouldn't have a Behance as well, because I know some people do find work that way, and it's where some companies might head to look for a freelancer. So it's worth having the profile, but I would recommend that you make your website your main point of contact and the main thing that you link people to as your portfolio. Well, that's all the portfolios that we have time for today, but if you like this series, please make sure you give this video a thumbs up, and like I said, this is the link where you can go and submit your own portfolio for review in a future episode if you're interested. If you want some practice critiquing, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on these portfolios down below in the comments. Be constructive, remember, critique should always be constructive. And yeah, tell me what you think about them. Thank you for watching this video, and to everyone who has submitted portfolios to review so far. There is way more than I can, keep up making videos for, but it's really fun to go through and see your work, so keep on submitting them. Coming up very soon, I'm going to have a very special way that we can have some one-on-one portfolio critique time. So stay tuned for that. I'll be telling you more about that next week, and I'm really excited to share it with you. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.